Hey everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore. And today I'm demonstrating some things in MuseScore 4 Playback through the MuseScore Café. And so you'll be getting to witness me exploring some new stuff that's new to me as well. So I'm hopeful that things all kind of work smoothly, and if not, you'll just have to bear with me because, I always expect some amount of technical weirdness. But in any case, trying new things always. So hopefully you're hearing the music here. This is MuseScore 4. We're hearing it. Things don't sound that different yet, but we're going to talk about what actually exists and what's going on and what's yet to come. So let me give you a little bit of a big picture um, of what's happening here. So the thing to know about MuseScore 4 is that it has been in development for quite a long time. And actually, let me make a little adjustment here. Here we go. Much better. All right, there we go. Um, Now I can see my chat. So MuseScore 4 has been in development for a long time, and really it started very soon after um, when the original developers of MuseScore were these, three people, or the main team was these three people based in Europe, and when the company Ultimate Guitar kind of took charge of things, and then eventually hired Martin Curie, known as Tentacruel online, as the kind of head of things, the direction kind of shifted to and it had already started before Martin came on board, but Martin kind of has been spearheading a lot of things to a more playback oriented thing. That's all I can say. It's as a composing tool with playback as a more serious component. So MuseScore 4 is going to be the first release of this sort of new series of what's happening. And so it really required taking everything that was in MuseScore and not rewriting everything, but rewriting a large amount of things. Basically, everything you see, like everything about how things look on the screen, how the palettes look, how the mixer looks, how the toolbars look, how the menus look, all of that code has been completely rewritten. And I've showed this off before when we had the alpha release, but I want to point this out because I didn't talk too much about the playback last time because it was still being worked on, and frankly is still being worked on. But what's the playback engine has also been very significantly reworked. And what we heard was not that. What we heard was basically the old code, or at least some of the old code. So I want to talk about what the new playback engine is going to be supporting and then show how we're going to be able to do these things. All right, so the first thing to know about how playback in MuseScore has always worked is it's always been based on a technology called the sound font. And you've probably, well, I know you've seen me uh, demonstrate different sound fonts that you can load into MuseScore. And a sound font it's called that because it's like a text font. If you think about a text font, it describes what every single letter should look like. This is what an A should look like. This is what a B should look like. This is what a C should look like. Well, a sound font defines what all the instruments should sound like. This is what a flute should sound like. This is what a clarinet should sound like. This is what a saxophone should sound like, etc. So a sound font contains all these different sounds. Some sound fonts just might only have clarinet sounds, and therefore you could only use that sound font for clarinets. And so MuseScore allows you to have multiple sound fonts loaded. So the way that all worked in MuseScore 3 is it's we're not going to talk about how it used to work. I want to show you how it works now, because MuseScore does still use sound fonts by default. And the reason is sound fonts are easy to work with and fast, don't take up much disk space. They're fine for basic purposes. And so everything that we're hearing here is using what's called the MS Basic sound font, which is essentially the same thing that in previous releases was called MuseScore General. Before that, it was called Fluid R3. MuseScore General took Fluid R3 and added some stuff to it, customized some things, etc. So, but MS Basic is essentially still the same sound font with just more tweaks and stuff to it. So everything we're hearing here is coming from that sound font. So before I talk any more about different sound fonts, I want to talk about some of the things that is actually going on here. Like, I'm going to select just this measure and press play. Well, first of all, let me select the rest here and press play. Right? And that's what you're used to hearing. I guess I should get back to the master volume so I can... Oh, it's hidden. Nuts. Guess I do have to go full screen again for a moment. Master volume, turn that back up. All right, so here we go. Oops. Select just, so this is something that it's going to take me a while to get used to. I'm going to select just the rest. And you hear everything like we're used to, right? Now let me select just, I'm going to select the measure. We heard just the trumpet. How about if I select the trumpet and sax? Yeah, let's add the trombone to the mix. So what we hear is if you make a range selection, if you select anything that puts a blue box around it. So you select a full measure or multiple measures, but also a full measure across multiple staves, it basically solos those instruments. Meaning that this mixer that I'm currently showing here, I can kind of close that a lot of the time. The main thing that a lot of people might be using the mixer for is just to solo things. And now we don't need the mixer for that anymore. If I want to hear just the guitar, and so on. So it looks like I still need to do this little resizing business again so that the interface knows that the thing got smaller. So here's just the piano. Right? So there's that. Now, one thing also, I don't know if Michael Olson is here or not, but I had commented before, I had noticed that the fretless bass was not actually working in MuseScore 4. They got that working last week. It was just an oversight. It was just, you add a fretless bass and what would come out would not be a fretless bass. It would be just a regular bass. But now... So, there we have that. So, yeah, by just selecting an instrument or multiple instruments, I want to hear the whole rhythm section. Say, let's select from guitars down to drums. Okay? So it's really easy now to just hear individual instruments. And yeah, the fretless bass sound, I think, is pretty much the same sound as before, but yeah, we get to solo it now. There's a couple of things you might have noticed, and this stuff is continuing to be worked on. That's why there's still not even a beta yet, although any day now. There's a couple of things you might have noticed. Like you might have noticed the fall here at the end of the horn line. Sounds different than it used to. If you've heard this every week, right? You haven't heard it as many times as me, but you've heard it a few times, right? That fall, I had it notated as a fall always, but in order to get it to play back, I had to add a glissando and make it invisible. So Dan is asking if you can select non-adjacent staves, and the answer is no, because MuseScore doesn't have a way to select non-adjacent staves. So if you want to hear non-adjacent things, you can do the same thing that you've done before, which is select the sax and the piano here, and now when I press play, right? So the solo buttons in the mixer will remain the way to get discontiguous staves to play. So that will remain the case. All right, so that fall, it never used to play back. So that is a new thing that falls actually play back. You don't have to fake them using glissandi anymore. So that's kind of nice. On the downside, it looks like these bends here are not playing back. Let me just play that. It was supposed to do these little bends up. So those used to play back, and currently they aren't. Hopefully by the time it releases, 4.0 releases, that'll be there. But that's a good reminder. I need to make a note to myself that bends still aren't there yet, and I was thinking that there was only one other thing that isn't working quite yet in this piece, and that is the Forte Piano right here. Right, so that did not Forte Piano. It just stayed Forte that whole time. The crescendo works if it you know, it would have worked if it had gone down to piano. But in any case, that's one of the few things not working yet. So, but yeah, all these other things are, implemented in a way that works a little better than it did before, in ways that are a little harder to describe how things are actually happening, but there's lots of little things. So what I want to do is now go to the mixer, and I want to show how you would go about loading other sound fonts. Oh gosh, I forgot. So last night, a bug showed up. This drop-down menu here that is currently empty, it's not supposed to be empty. They're supposed to be showing things in here. But this is where you would now select another sound font. This is where, if you have multiple sound fonts on your system, you would be able to select them in here. So let me actually just sort of walk through where those are. So if I open my file browser here and go to my scores folder, I'm going to go up a level. Even though this says MuseScore 3, it's really I'm right now sharing my folders between MuseScore 3 and MuseScore 4. I need to go actually to my drive, and then I need to go to MuseScore 4. For most of you, this will be documents, and then MuseScore 4. And so here, where it says sound fonts, this is where you will place your sound fonts. So breath marks don't work. So breath marks are a thing that mean two different things depending on your context. Breath marks work in the way that they work for wind instruments, which is they just mean it's a hint to the player to take a breath. It doesn't change anything about the playback. And ideally, that's what breath marks should do. They're not meant to change the playback. In vocal music, there is a convention that when you see a breath mark, that sort of implies a little pause in the music. That would never be the case in wind ensemble music. But in choral music, often it does mean a little pause. So let's talk about how that is going to work. Let's go ahead and create a new score. So I'll hit Control N to create a new score. And what we're going to see is as MuseScore creates new scores, it's going to do this by actually creating a whole new window. And this is going to allow you to have entirely different sounds for every score. MuseScore 3 limited you. Whatever sound fonts you loaded for one score, those same sound fonts would be there for the other score. MuseScore 4 is going to allow you to have entirely different sounds set up for each different score that's open. In order to do that, you're going to have them in different windows. So that's what's going to happen when you open new scores here. So I create my new score, and let's close my mixer because I don't need it here, and I'll add some notes. And I'll add a breath mark after, I gotta remember where breath marks are in here. If I add a breath mark, it's going to play it, with no pause, which is the correct interpretation for a wind player. Now, a wind player might choose to shorten, they're going to try to take that breath as quickly as possible, but realistically, it is going to shorten that note. But MuseScore doesn't, by default, shorten that note. There are different plugins and different ways of shortening that note if you want. If you want to enter an actual pause here, we're going to come over to the Properties panel. In MuseScore 3, it would be the Inspector. And here, you can choose to give it a little bit of a pause. Like just a tenth of a second might be enough. Now, that wasn't enough to hear. But if I, add a larger pause, say 0.6 seconds, well, that didn't actually pause, did it? So it appears that the pause time is not working. So there's another thing of the many things that we get to continue to report and try to have fixed. That should be working. Let me try actually one of the other pauses because now I'm a little curious about this. I'm going to come over here and add one of the other types of pauses like the caesura here. This one, that does pause. Okay, so there's the deal. The breath mark itself, the pause isn't honored for playback, but the caesura is, and that might be the case in MuseScore 3 also. I, to be honest, don't remember because I don't tend to use it. Close and open, and they work. That's interesting. Interesting. Okay. Good feedback. So anytime you find bugs in MuseScore 4 in any of these pre-release builds, I encourage you to go to GitHub, the MuseScore project on GitHub to report them, to make sure they get noted. But do I have a pen handy enough to jot down a note? Nope. I'm gonna do it by writing a little note to myself here in, we'll use Carrot. It's a text editor. Breath playback. What was the other thing? Bends. I need to make sure I remind about bends. And that's guitar bend. Playback. Was there something else? I don't know. We'll see. All right. So good. So yes, if there were sound fonts here, if I had some sound fonts loaded, and again, let me show you my sound fonts folder. It's under MuseScore 4 sound fonts. Your MuseScore 4 folder is going to have scores, plugins, templates, styles, sound fonts. These are all the same folders that existed for MuseScore 3, but now they're under MuseScore 4. But now there's also this thing called cloud scores. This is a new thing that's sort of a new way of integrating with MuseScore.com that I haven't explored yet, and I'll because it only got enabled a week or two ago. So I'll be exploring that in a future episode. All right. So what I can do though is I do have some sound fonts in my MuseScore 3 folder. So let me just take one of those and let's take this soft trumpet sound font and just copy it over to MuseScore 4. MuseScore 4. You can also, well, I'll show you this in a second also. You can also just tell MuseScore 4 to look in the MuseScore 3 folder, which might be actually a little easier for me because I've got a bunch of sound fonts there already. All right, now that those sound fonts are there, if this were working, I would now be seeing it here. It's possible I might have to restart MuseScore before. Let me actually just create yet another new score, this one for trumpet, and see if that sound font shows up, because now it's basically, this is a new instance of MuseScore. So let's go to brass, pick trumpet, and here's my score. And let's try to click the sound. Yeah, unfortunately, this only broke last night. I swear this was working yesterday, but this broke today, that these menus are now empty and useless. That'll be fixed tomorrow. It's already fixed, apparently, but I have still a broken version, so I can't select sound fonts here. But that's okay. Not to worry. I got plenty more to show you. But the thing is, if you remember in MuseScore 3, In the mixer, you didn't select which sound font you wanted, you selected which sound you wanted. So if you had a whole bunch of different sound fonts loaded, you would have to scroll all the way through this big long list of all the sounds in each sound font and then try to guess which sound came from which sound font. Um, and so that didn't really work all that well. I mean, it worked, but it was awkward. Now you don't have to select, you don't have to scroll through this big list of all the individual sounds. You just select which sound font you want, and it will then, switch to that sound font and pick the corresponding sound in that sound font. Now, this does come with a limitation for now, where this is going to be addressed not before MuseScore 4 is released, but for 4.1 or whatever. The limitation is the sound font has to be General MIDI compatible so that MuseScore knows how to find the sounds in it. So that if you want to use the trumpet sound, it knows what number the trumpet sound is. So if you want to use a different sound font, it's got to be General MIDI compatible, or it has to have just a trumpet sound, and then MuseScore will use it. So you'll have to, if you want to use sound fonts, that is the limitation. They'll have to either be General MIDI compatible, or it'll have to be a sound font with just a single sound. That limitation will be removed soon enough, but for now that'll be it. But the assumption is people are not going to care about sound fonts once they hear what else is uh, what else is coming. So Katrina, if you can post the link to where you posted it in the support. So the problem is the support thing is not looked at by the developers. They really only look at GitHub. So I'd recommend going to GitHub and creating an account. It's just free to create an account. Takes a minute. Because yeah, it's same with DS. If you're experiencing any problems, you'll really want to be able to report them directly, and GitHub is the place where the developers will see it. But I'll attempt to find your thing on GitHub. But if you can give me a link to it, that'll help too. All right, so I've almost exhausted what I can do here using my current machine here. This is my Chromebook I'm on now that I'm always on. My Chromebook is running Linux. And when we talk about limitations, again, there's certain limitations that are going to exist for MuseScore 4.0 that, by 4.1 they'll be lifted. And one of the limitations is the next thing I want to show you, Vst Instruments, doesn't work on Linux yet. And so it'll work by 4.1, or whatever, 4 point something, but it won't work at 4.0. Before I show you that, I do want to show you one thing here, and that is if I do want to have access to all my MuseScore 3 sound fonts, I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, Folders, and here, under Sound Fonts, I am going to, instead of this folder here, MuseScore for Development Sound Fonts, I'm going to pick my MuseScore 3 folder. And now, if these drop downs were working at all, it would know to look in the MuseScore 3 folder, and it would be showing me the list of all the MuseScore 3 sound fonts. So that's a place you can go. Edit, Preferences, Folders, and tell it where you want to look. That way, you can share sound fonts between MuseScore 3 and MuseScore 4, because most of us are going to have to do that, right? We're going to be splitting time between MuseScore 3 and MuseScore 4 during this transition period. Now, by the way, you've been looking at this mixer a lot. So F10 is the shortcut, and I guess I don't have my shortcut thing on, but F10 is the shortcut to toggle the mixer, just like it was in MuseScore 3, but there is now also a button here on the toolbar to toggle the mixer. MuseScore 3 had a separate window called the synthesizer, and that was where you loaded sound fonts. In MuseScore 4, that window doesn't even exist anymore. There's no more need for the synthesizer window. You will load your sound font directly by selecting it here in the mixer. So there's no longer a separate step of loading sound fonts. All right, so as I said, I think I've pretty much exhausted the let me go ahead and click your link there, Katrina. I've couldn't find. Okay, so this was a little bit ago. There we go. And I am a little curious if that bug was if the comma pause was being ignored in MuseScore 3 also, but we can find that out. So what I want to do now is I do want to show you VST instruments. And VST instruments are, I won't say new to me. I used them 20 years ago when they were new. I don't know if it was 20, but it was a long time ago. But I haven't used them since until just been playing with them recently. So you'll have to kind of, as always, bear with me a little bit. And I'm going to be doing some, experimenting right before your eyes. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to kill my screen share and I'm going to kill my camera, not to worry, because I'm just going to switch computers for a second. So let me think about this. I'm going to keep using my mic here on this computer. So let me do that. I'm going to put this computer down. This is high-tech switching here. But bye-bye this camera. But you can still hear me, right? Please let me know that you can still hear me because my mic is still right where it was. And now I'm going to turn on the mic on this computer. I mean, not the mic. Turn on the camera on this computer. Here I am. There we go. Nope. I was there for a second. Come back. Come back, me. Okay, so here I am again. And I am going to share the screen of this system now, along with the audio. Okay, I have to think. We're hearing my voice coming back through here. So I think I do need to kill this mic. And come back with this mic. This sounds better to me. Yeah, it's a little distracting because I can hear it still coming back, but I'm not going to worry about it. But you all let me know if you hear some sort of terrible echo. All right, what I want to do now is show you a little bit about using VST instruments. So I'm going to come over to MuseScore here, and I'm going to create a new score. Maybe the smart thing to do is just to leave the stream from my other machine. That's probably smarter. I'm afraid to, though, so I'm not gonna. All right, I'm going to add some strings. Okay, I have some strings. Violins, right? I'm going to change now to a VST instrument. All right, so Colleen, you can obviously watch during the replay, and yeah, it'll be somewhat exciting, but it'll be really exciting when Muse Sounds comes in, hopefully by next week. All right, I'm going to come here, and I'm using 2 days ago build here so that I don't have the bug with the empty folders, but this is how you can see where sound fonts would be under sound fonts. But now you see VST instruments. The VST instruments you have to install on your computer. So I have to talk about that a little bit because what do I need to tell you about it? VST instruments are not like sound fonts. Sound fonts are just audio files with some stuff around them, and the same exact sound font file can work on Windows and on Mac and on Linux. They're just like text fonts. They're cross-platform compatible. So sound font files are portable in that way. VST instruments are not. A VST instrument is either for Windows, or it's for Mac, or it's for Linux. And because they are basically programs. In Windows terminology, they're DLL files. There's more to it than that, but that's what they are. They're dynamically load libraries. So a VST instrument is basically using that type of technology, the same type of technology that programs use, or that oh, I know why I'm hearing a problem, because headphones are plugged into the wrong thing. Ha. Let me know if anything is not good about my sound now, but hopefully just plugging in my headphones into my other computer made this all happier here. Now I don't hear myself echoing anymore. But if anything went wrong, let me know and I'll switch the headphones back. So VSTs are like little programs. So when you download them, you have to say if you're downloading for Windows or downloading for Mac, or if you're downloading for Linux. Except, as I said, we don't quite support VST instruments on Linux yet. Coming after 4.0, sometime after 4.0, they will work on Linux. But there's not as many Linux VST instruments as there are VST instruments for Windows and Mac. So I have downloaded a set from a company called Spitfire Audio, and I've downloaded two different sets there. One is their Labs set, and actually these sets, their sound fonts are, as I said, there's a thing called General MIDI, which means when I said that a sound font will tell you what a flute and a clarinet and a piano and a violin sounds like, etc. That's all. Let me make sure I still don't have any confirmation. Can someone please just confirm for me that that you're all hearing me? That would be lovely. But I don't hear anyone saying you're not hearing me, so that much is a good sign. So what am I saying? So a sound font has a whole lot of different instruments in it, and there's like a standardized order that they show up in. That's what, thanks, Dan, and Robert, and Bob, and everyone who's telling me that you hear me. Good. So there's a standardized order that instruments appear in a sound font. This is what General MIDI is, and this is what allows you to just load in a sound font, and magically it all just sort of works with new sounds. VST isn't like that. With VST, you have to go through instrument by instrument and tell it what you want. So I'm going to come here and tell it I want to use BBC Symphony, but it doesn't know how to find the violin within that. It's not going to know how to do that. It's going to have to bring up a little window. And this is why VST instruments are like little mini programs. They're programs that have their own user interface. What we're looking at here is Spitfire. This is not MuseScore, but MuseScore pops it open. When you want to use a VST instrument, MuseScore will open the VST graphical front end here. And that's the part, by the way, that isn't working on Linux. The actual audio was working fine, but getting it to work, the user interface, was not working for a number of technical reasons that were going to take too long to solve. So that's why they're not there. So in any case, this is Spitfire we're looking at. Every different VST instrument you download has its own user interface like this. So Spitfire produces dozens, I don't know how many different sounds, lots of different sounds that you can download, but they all go through this same interface here. So like in this drop-down menu here, you can see the ones that I've downloaded. I've downloaded some strings, I've downloaded some brass, I've downloaded some woodwinds and some percussion. I've also downloaded, oh yeah, because those are the ones that are all part of this set. But there's other sets that Spitfire produces, and I've downloaded some other ones also. So there's just lots of different stuff that you can access here in this window. But this window is it's different for every VST. So I'm going to show you how Spitfire works a little bit, which I'm still discovering. But I've now selected Violins 1, and now I'm going to close that window. And you can see now that the mixer is telling me that I've selected that. Let me go ahead actually and add another violin. I'm going to add more violins. And add the same passage in down here. I'm not hearing. Why am I not hearing? That's not a good sign. Oh no. This will be bad. You guys aren't hearing. I tested this right before the thing and it was working. You hear it. I don't hear it. Okay. So that's interesting. You hear it and I don't hear it. Is it that oh, I'm muted. I'm muted. Huh. I still don't hear it, but since you do, I'm not going to worry about it. All right then. I guess that's the choice I get, whether I hear myself echoing or whether I hear the audio. I guess I got to go with it this way. Yep, there it is. So this is just plain MuseScore playback. This is the BBC VST. So VST instruments are inherently have the capability of sounding better than a sound font. But if you just hear in isolation like that, just single notes like that, it's not necessarily all that impressive. It's what happens when you actually build an entire score, and I'm going to play you one in a little bit. But I want to show you a few other things about how VST instruments work. So far, I've showed you how to select them, but let me go back to this window here. Notice that in this window, there's these different things here. There's it says long, spiccato, pizzicato, or tremolo, right? These are the different sounds that were all different samples. So let me put the pizzicato sound in it. And now we're going to hear. Now we hear the pizzicato sound, right? So you select between these different sounds using Spitfire here. But there's more to it than this. You don't want to have this window open every time you play a score. You want there to be a way to tell Spitfire, hey, change from regular to pizzicato now. And again, I mentioned that with General MIDI, this is standardized. There's a nice way that with sound fonts and General MIDI, you can just write the arco, you can write the pizzicato marking, put it in your score, and it knows how to do the right stuff. With VST, that is unfortunately not the case. So anytime you use a VST instrument, you have to tell the VST instrument when to switch and how to switch. And the way I'm going to show you how to do this, it's a little bit mind-blowing that this is how it works. But anyone who's used VST instruments, feel free to back me up on this or tell me any detail I have wrong about it. But with VST instruments, actually, let me think about something here because I'm fine. I still wanted to get my headphones back onto this machine, but that's fine. It's the key is what are called key switches, and I'm gonna delete these notes here because I don't want them. I'm going to add a second staff to this. All right, and actually, let me just play some more notes and then repeat this passage. So I'm selecting it. I'll press R to repeat it a few times. What I'm going to do is select this staff, come over to the Instruments panel, and I'm going to click this little thing next to where it says Violins and add staff. So now I have two staves. I'm also going to change the clef of this to bass clef. I'm going to go back over to the palettes, change it to bass clef. Why, you're going to see in a second. There is special magic that is built into most VSTs. So VST Virtual Studio Technology. I already forget now. Dave told me before, and I've already forgotten what it stands for. But a VST instrument is what we're dealing with. So sometimes you'll see VST-I. VST can also be used for effects like reverb and so forth. But VST instruments usually use a technique referred to as key switching. And what key switching does is it's a way of telling the sound to switch between long notes and pizzicato notes by pressing a key, literally pressing a key. So the key that we're going to press is Virtual Studio Technology. Good, thanks, Frank. And I think that's what I said the first time. The key we're going to press is a C way down lower than a piano even has. We have to tell MuseScore to press the C. The delay in the video. So so I see what you're saying, Bob, and I have a feeling this has to do with the fact that I'm using two different machines here. And so hopefully it's not a big issue or anything. But yeah, it's probably a little bit inevitable. This is more of an audio demonstration anyhow, right? But so I'm going to have to tell MuseScore to play a really low note. And it's such a low note that how am I going to put this? MuseScore can't play it. So I'm going to have to use the VST thing here to move the note up. And this is like a weird thing about Spitfire. I think other VSTs will work differently, but there's a special thing I do where I'm going to click this, and I can actually make this window a little bigger so I can see it better, and you all can see it better too. There's this little icon here, and I'm going to drag it. See these green, now look down here. See these green notes showing up? These green notes are telling me which notes are going to trigger the key switch. So I want to make it be a low C that I can actually play, like those low C, like that low C right there, instead of low C lower than I can actually play. So the fact that I have to do this in Spitfire is because Spitfire is configured to require a C lower than most instruments can play. So I have to do this special thing of moving it up. That's a weirdness about Spitfire. It's just a weird thing about Spitfire. So I have a feeling actually the delay is maybe going to show up more when I'm playing notes, and maybe you'll see the notes not be in sync with the music. I don't know, but let's find out. So I've moved these notes up to a range where I can actually hear them, where I'll be able to play them. So you're wondering what I mean by this. So right now, when I play this, it's actually not delaying for me either. It all sounds fine. I'm going to now add a low C. I have to remember which low C it is. I think it's this one. That changed it to pizzicato, right? And I think C shouldn't have changed it. I think I actually messed up a little bit here, and this is off by one. So let me shift this a little bit. I want to make sure what I'm trying to do is there should be 4 green bars, basically 4 notes showing up in green here, and I only have 3 showing up before. One of them was just off screen, so I need to make sure the lowest one is C. Now I'm seeing all 4 of them because I want that low C to be the thing that does long, and then C sharp will change to spiccato, D will change to pizzicato, and D sharp will change to tremolo. So let's hear that. I'm going to play this now. Great. Now I'm going to select this, copy it here, and change it to C sharp. Copy it here, change it to D, and copy here, and change it to D sharp. So now we're going to hear it actually play those 4 different sounds. So, and then I can also go back to the original C sound here. And use C so that after the tremolo, it goes back to just regular. So this idea of using key switches is how you can switch between all these different sounds that a VST provides. And if you think about it, sound fonts don't usually do that. There is a muted trumpet, but there's not a lot of different sounds other than that. There's not like separate sounds for staccato notes. A staccato in a sound font, if you want to play a trumpet staccato, it'll play it shorter, but it won't change the attack. It won't change the sound. It'll just be shorter. But a real trumpet, if you're playing staccato, it's going to have more tongue to it. It's going to actually change the sound. Well, VST instruments allow you to do that, but then you'll need to add these key switch notes to actually trigger the staccato. Now, you'll still want to write in the staccato, right? So I did this with violins. If I had, well, I could go ahead and add a trumpet also, right? Let's add a trumpet. Brass, trumpet. Okay, and so that's all. I wonder also, let me think about something about the whole delay and weirdness business here. I'm going to try one more thing because I forgot that I might need to do this here. I'm going to change my audio settings there and see if this changes anything for you. If I play this now, is it changing anything at all about how things sound for you? Did that improve it or did it make it worse? Is the question. If it didn't make it worse, I'm just going to leave it, whether it improved it or not. But so this is the trumpet, and then I can do the same thing of selecting the trumpet here and telling it Spitfire. Same. Okay, that's good to know. BBC, and it's going to pop up that same thing, and then I come down in here and tell it, hey, I want to use the trumpet sound. Load. And now the trumpets. This will play as trumpets. And again, I'm going to use the trick of selecting the measure so it doesn't play the violin stuff. So now I'm playing with the BBC trumpet sound. And similarly, I can come over here. I can do the same thing. Let's open that trumpets thing. You can see now that it's got two different sounds, one for long, one for staccato. Let's listen to the staccato one. So that's actually not just shorter, but it's a totally different sound. Okay, it's using different samples. It recorded someone playing long notes, and then it recorded them playing staccato notes. So different amounts of tongue in those two sounds. So if you want to take full advantage of VST instruments, this is what you do. You for each instrument in your score, you select which VST instrument you want it to play, and then every time it changes staccato and all the different sounds, you're going to add these key switches. And now you're looking at this going, no way do I want to do all that, right? You're probably thinking that sounds like crazy talk. I agree. It sounds like crazy talk to me. And yet, it's what people do. People who really care about getting good playback in MuseScore 3, that's what they've been doing. They've been using VST instruments, not in MuseScore, because MuseScore doesn't support, MuseScore 3 didn't support VST instruments. But they would use a digital audio workstation, a totally separate program like Reaper or Ardor or all these other digital audio workstations that exist out there, and they would use MuseScore either to create a MIDI file that they would then load into their digital audio workstation, or they would use jack or MIDI output as a way of um, uh, communicating with the digital audio workstation so that it could use those sounds and then somehow figure out how to integrate those key switches also. And it would have been a pain in MuseScore 3. In MuseScore 4, you can do it all directly within MuseScore, which is great. How many VSTs can be running? That I don't know. That's probably, yeah. I have absolutely no idea what the upper limits on this are. So I talk about this as being something that, yes, you can do, and obviously it's a lot of work to do this. Muse Sounds is going to be MuseScore 4's crowning achievement, and this is something that's going to render VSTs largely obsolete also. Not completely, but everything that I just showed you that you can do, Muse Sounds will do automatically. It's like combining the best of what sound fonts give you, which is kind of the automation of knowing which instruments are which and knowing how to switch from pizzicato to arco. It combines all the best of that with the best of VST, like being able to actually have different samples for staccato notes versus legato notes, or different samples for uh, um, yeah, all these different things can actually use different samples and much more. Slurred notes are also handled specifically by MuseSounds. Lots of things will be handled by MuseSounds completely automatically, but with the expressive power of VST instruments. So MuseSounds isn't a VST exactly, but it kind of sort of is. It's just a VST with extra stuff. So Katrina's asking if MuseSounds will have good sax sounds. I don't know the answer. I know it has saxophone sounds, but I haven't heard them yet. I've heard a demo of some of the other sounds, and they're incredible, the ones that I heard. But I don't know what the saxophone sounds like. My guess is, since these are called or an orchestral library, is it's probably going to sound like classical saxophone, less like jazz. That's my guess. But we'll find out real soon. I mean, it could be any day now that they release it. We just don't know. There's a couple little hanging on issues um, that are getting in the way of it being released, but could be any day now. That we'll be finding out. So I want to talk. So the fact that it required all that work, where I have to go through each instrument and select which VST instrument I want, that's kind of a drag. But at least once you've done it, it does get saved with the score, and then you can create templates that use that, and so you only have to do that work a limited number of times is the hope here, so that all that work of setting things up, at least going to the mixer and selecting all the individual sounds, that work you don't have to do every time. Adding all these key switches, that's work every time. But hopefully you will discover with Muse Sounds that you won't need VST instruments so much. Like, for instance, guitars. I don't think there's guitars in Muse Sounds because it's not an orchestral instrument. So what you might want to do is, if you want to use guitar in your score, um, you would create the score, tell it to use Muse Sounds, but then for the guitar, tell it to use a VST instrument, and then you can have that. So let's go ahead and hear some real music to kind of close things out. I said that the power of VST instruments is going to be more apparent only when you hear it in context of something more than these tiny little demos here. So let me close up a couple of my other things here to make sure I've got enough uh, memory, because I don't know how taxing this really is. And I'm going to open a score that I wrote when I was in college, and I wrote it with Finale. MuseScore wasn't a thing yet. And I wrote it in college, and I had the foresight to export it to Music XML some time ago, and so I was able to load it into MuseScore 4 yesterday. And I went and loaded it into MuseScore 4, and then I went ahead and set up all those BBC instruments, all those VSTs are set up for this score. So what we're going to see is when this score loads, it's going to be using those BBC instruments across the board. And what you're also going to see is it's going to take longer to load than a score that doesn't use VST instruments as a result. Robert's asking about Note Performer. So Note Performer is the thing that MuseSounds is our version of. So MuseScore isn't Finale, MuseSounds isn't Note Performer, but MuseScore does everything Finale does, MuseSounds does everything Note Performer does. You won't need Note Performer because you will have MuseSounds. That's the deal. And it really is quite similar in the overall effect and how it does things to try to make the playback as realistic as possible. We'll talk about MuseSounds more when I when I have it to actually show. But MuseSounds is basically Note Performer for free. Note Performer you have to buy, and it's a separate purchase, and it only works with Finale and Sibelius. It only works with the things that it works with, but MuseSounds will work with MuseScore, and it's a free download. All right, so you can see all the BBC instruments are set up here. So this is a piece that I wrote in college, and I'm just going to go ahead and play it here so we can hear this happening. All right, so this piece is a while long. I don't have anything more to say after this, but we can be chatting while it's playing, and I hope you enjoy it and hope it gets you excited by some of the things coming in MuseScore 4 and MuseSounds. Hopefully we'll get to hear the same piece with any luck next week, and we'll hear it in MuseSounds hopefully. So let's, and if not next week, maybe in 2 weeks, but yeah, I think it'll be next week. So let's go ahead and hear this without further ado. No, we're not. Well, there you have it. And ooh, now I'm echoing from my other mic here, but I hope you enjoyed that demonstration of the VST instruments. And yeah, of course, we're hearing it come through the stream and everything. Obviously, it's going to sound better on your own computer also. But hopefully next week we'll get to hear some Muse sounds and be able to do some comparisons and really get into all of that. So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for hanging out. And we'll catch you next time. I think I'm just going to go out on that music rather than replay the theme song, just because let's just go out on that. All right. See you all next time.